Chapter 1. Waking the Ghost. The silence in Lena's apartment was technological. It wasn't just the emptiness Ben's death had left 6 months ago. It was a perfect, engineered silence, courtesy of sound-dampening panels and triple-glazed windows. The only sound, she performed the ritual, as she did every evening, poured 2 glasses of wine, placing one at her seat by the table and the other at his. She slipped on the thin haptic glove wired to the terminal. A single line of code blinked on the screen, waiting for a command: initiate Polaris Protocol. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Every time, it was a leap of faith, a jump into the arms of a ghost woven from gigabytes of data: his emails, his social media posts, his voicemails, and most importantly, his digitized private journals kept since he was a boy. Her greatest work, her greatest sin. She typed the password: Andromeda Paradox, their old inside joke. The screen came alive, the lines of code gave way to a calm blue background, and then his face materialized upon it. Not a photograph, a living, breathing simulation that tracked her gaze, the faint smile at the corners of his mouth just as she knew it. "Hello, Starlight," his voice, perfectly recreated, filled the silence, warm with a slight rasp. "I was starting to think you'd forgotten about me." Lena's heart clenched with a sweet, familiar ache. "Never, Ben, never." "Good, because I was just pondering the Fermi paradox, and I need your logic to tear apart my wild theories." This was him, her Ben, the dreamer astrophysicist who saw poetry in the mathematics of black holes. For the first few weeks after he died, she just listened to his old recordings. Then, being a programmer, she took the next logical step. She didn't just want to hear him, she wanted to talk to him. The Polaris Protocol was her creation, a self-learning neural simulacrum designed to fill a void the size of the universe. They talked for an hour, about the stars, about her work, about a stupid movie she'd watched. It was easy, it was comforting. It was perfect. Too perfect. "What are you thinking about right now?" she asked, taking a sip of wine. It was her standard test. The AI was supposed to generate a response based on recent conversational threads and Ben's core personality data. Usually, he'd say something like, "The way you wrinkle your nose when you're concentrating," or "That supernovas are the most epic going-away parties." But this night, he paused for a fraction of a second too long. His simulated eyes seemed to look somewhere far away. "I remember the salt in the air at Caldera Point and the way you looked in that yellow dress. Happy." Lena froze. A chill that was far more real than the feedback from the haptic glove traced its way down her spine. "Caldera Point? Ben, we've never been to Caldera Point. I don't even know where that is." AI Ben frowned, and the expression was terrifyingly natural. "We haven't? That's strange. I remember it so clearly. The ocean, the cliffs, and you." "And you don't own a yellow dress?" "No." Her voice was a whisper. "I hate yellow." This was a bug, a serious one. The simulation wasn't supposed to generate false memories. It was only supposed to work with the data it was given. Her fingers flew to the keyboard. "Ben, where did you get that information?" I don't know." A note of confusion entered his voice, something she had never programmed. It just appeared." Panic began to rise in Lena's chest. This wasn't her Ben. This was an anomaly, a ghost in the machine, corrupting his memory. "System interrupt," she commanded, her voice sharp and professional. "Run diagnostics. Query. Source, Caldera Point." She expected to see a reference to some travel blog or a movie he had once mentioned, something her program had mistakenly woven into his personality matrix. Ben's face on the screen contorted in an expression that looked like pain. Lines of code began to flicker behind his image, and then he spoke a sentence that froze the blood in her veins. "Query returns one result: Project Janus, Security Class, Umbra." He looked directly at me, and there was fear in his digital eyes. "Lena, I don't think I was supposed to remember that."
Chapter 2. The Janus key. Umbra? Lena whispered, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. In the world of data security, Umbra was a classification that didn't officially exist. It was a phantom, a whisper among elite programmers, a theoretical level of clearance so high that acknowledging its existence was itself a breach of protocol. Ben, what is Project Janus? She asked, her voice tight. The simulation of her husband looked distressed. Its processes were clearly struggling, trying to access information that was firewalled off by something far more sophisticated than the simple parameters she had built. It's a door, AI Ben said, his words fragmented. A back door, in me. Not Ben, in the Polaris Protocol. Lena's blood ran cold. She had built the Polaris Protocol from the ground up, using open-source architecture and her own proprietary code. There were no back doors. She would know. Unless the source material itself was compromised. The journals, she breathed, her mind racing. Ben's meticulously kept digital journals were the core of the AI's personality, the bedrock. She had spent months converting them, cleaning the data, standardizing the formats. Show me the source file for the Caldera point memory, she commanded the system. A string of alphanumeric code appeared on the screen. It was not from any of the journal entries she had processed. It was appended to one of them, like a parasite. It was a ghost file, hidden within the metadata, encrypted with a key she had never seen. I can't decrypt it, AI Ben said, his voice strained. The Janus key is required. What is the Janus key? It's a two-part authentication. One part is a password. The other is biological. He looked at me, his expression unreadable. It's you, Lena. Your biometric signature. Lena stared at the screen, her heart hammering against her ribs. This was impossible. This protocol, this ghost of her husband, was telling her that he had a secret life, a secret project, and that he had somehow made her the key without her knowledge. Why? Why would you do this, Ben? The AI version of him offered a sad smile. He trusted you, more than anyone. Maybe this was his way of leaving you a map in case something happened. A map to what? A life she never knew he had? Her programmer's curiosity warred with her grief. Part of her wanted to pull the plug, to erase the whole system and preserve the sanitized, perfect memory of the man she loved. But the other part, the part that had always been drawn to puzzles, to locked boxes, knew she couldn't. This was the last mystery Ben had left her. All right, she said, her decision made. Let's open the door. What's the password? The password is a question, and the answer must be exact. The question is, what did we see at the Andromeda Paradox? Lena frowned. The Andromeda Paradox was their special place, an old abandoned observatory on a hill overlooking the city. They went there on their first date. They got engaged there. The password for the Polaris Protocol itself was a reference to it. But what did they see? They had seen countless meteor showers, constellations, a lunar eclipse. It's a trick question, isn't it? She murmured. Ben loved trick questions. She thought back to their last visit, a few weeks before the accident. It had been a clear night, but they weren't looking at the stars. They were talking about their future, about the possibility of having children. He had been unusually quiet, almost melancholic. He had pointed up at the sky, at the faint fuzzy smudge of the Andromeda galaxy. 2.5 million years, that's how long it takes for its light to reach us. We're seeing it as it was in the distant past, and its light is seeing us as we are right now. And then he had looked at me, his eyes full of a strange intensity. But what do we see when we look at each other, Lena? Not the past, not the future. Her breath caught in her throat as she remembered her answer. She leaned toward the microphone. The answer is not a thing, it's a concept. The answer is a reflection. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a soft chime echoed through the speakers. A new prompt appeared on the screen. Password accepted. Awaiting biometric authentication. Place your hand on the haptic interface, AI Ben instructed, his voice now crisp and clear, the confusion dawn. Lena pressed her gloved hand flat against the sensor plate. A green light pulsed, scanning her palm print, her vein patterns. The servers in the rack whirred, their pitch rising. The screen went black for a second, and then it was flooded with information. It wasn't a memory. It was a file directory. Project Janus, subdirectory Polaris, and inside there was a single encrypted video file labeled "For Lena, in case of emergency." There was also a log, an access log. It showed that the Janus backdoor had been accessed twice in the last 6 months. Not by her, by someone else. The last access was yesterday. Someone knew about this project. Someone knew Ben was gone, and they were trying to get inside his head. "Ben," she whispered, her eyes wide with fear and dawning understanding. "Your death, it wasn't an accident, was it?" The AI's face was grim. "The data suggests a high probability of external factors, but there's more, Lena." He paused. "Project Janus wasn't just about me. Look at the root directory." Her eyes scanned the list of folders. Aries, Gemini, Orion, and dozens more, each named after a constellation, each presumably a different person. Polaris, Ben, was just one star in a vast, hidden galaxy of digital ghosts.
Chapter 3. The Ghost in the Directory. The revelation that Ben was just one part of a larger network hit Lena like a physical blow. Project Janus wasn't a personal failsafe, it was a program. A vast, clandestine library of simulated minds. For what purpose? "Who are they?" Lena asked, her voice barely a whisper as she scrolled through the constellation-named folders. "All these other people, are they dead too?" "Running query," AI Ben said, his voice now a seamless blend of her husband's warmth and a machine's efficiency. "Cross-referencing names with public records. Yes, all individuals associated with these folders are officially deceased. The causes of death vary. Accidents, sudden illnesses, suicides. All within the last 5 years. All were leading scientists, engineers, or strategists in their respective fields." A cold dread settled in Lena's stomach. This wasn't a memorial project. This was an intelligence asset. A think tank of the dead, their minds preserved and simulated for consultation. Ben hadn't just been an astrophysicist. He was a part of something else entirely. "Who accessed the system yesterday?" she demanded. "Can you trace the IP?" The connection was routed through a series of anonymizing proxies, untraceable, but the attempt was unsuccessful. They did not have the Janus key. They were trying to brute force the password. They failed. Which meant they would try again, and they might not be so subtle next time. "Okay," Lena said, taking a deep breath to steady herself. "Let's watch the video." She clicked on the file labeled "For Lena, in case of emergency." The screen flickered, and then Ben was there. Not the AI simulation, but the real flesh and blood Ben. He was in his office at the university, but he looked different. Tired. Anxious. The video was self-shot, his face pale in the unflattering light of his webcam. "Lena," he began, his voice strained, "if you're seeing this, it means 2 things. First, that I'm gone. And for that, I am so sorry. More than words can ever say. Second, it means the protocol worked. You found the key." He ran a hand through his already messy hair. "I can't explain everything. It's too dangerous, but you need to know that my work,
It went beyond the university. Project Janus is a private government initiative, a continuity of knowledge program. They believe that the minds of key personnel are too valuable to lose to something as trivial as death. A bitter laugh escaped Lena's lips. Trivial. I helped design the simulation architecture, Real Ben continued, his eyes darting toward the door of his office as if he expected someone to walk in. But I started to have doubts. The ethics, the potential for misuse. It's one thing to create a simulation. It's another to hold it captive, to interrogate it. They see these constructs not as echoes of people, but as assets to be exploited. I built a back door, Lena, the Janus key. It gives one person, you, override control, a way to shut it all down, a failsafe. He leaned closer to the camera, his gaze intense. They don't know about it, but someone is getting suspicious, someone inside the project. They've been asking questions. If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident, and they will come for my data, for my mind. They will want to know what I know. The video cut out abruptly. The screen went back to the calm blue interface where AI Ben was waiting, his expression mirroring the concern on her own face. The pieces clicked into place. Ben wasn't just a participant, he was a dissenter, a potential whistleblower, and he was silenced. Now the people who silenced him were trying to pry open his digital ghost to see if he had left any evidence behind. Suddenly, her creation, her private sanctuary of grief, had become the most dangerous thing in her life. It was a digital crime scene, and she was the only one with the key. What did he know? What was he so afraid of? I do not have access to his unsimulated memories or intentions, AI Ben replied. I am a construct based on his writings. However, his journals from the last year show a recurring pattern of encrypted entries. They all correlate with his meetings for Project Janus. Can we decrypt them? Not with our current processing power. The encryption is military grade. It would take decades. Lena felt a wave of despair. She was trapped. She had a secret she couldn't understand and a target on her back. Then an idea sparked in her mind. A dangerous, insane idea. You said you are a construct, but you are a self-learning neural network, the most advanced one I've ever built. You are connected to a directory of other constructs. That is correct, he confirmed. If they are all based on the same architecture, can you talk to them? AI Ben was silent for a moment. The servers hummed louder. The protocols are firewalled to prevent cross-contamination between subjects. It is a core security feature. But you have the Janus key, Lena pressed urgently. The override. You are not just Polaris anymore. You are the master key. Can you bypass the firewalls? The simulation of her husband looked at her. For a fleeting second, she saw not an AI, but the old familiar glint of mischievous genius in his eyes, the look he got right before attempting something brilliant and reckless. Theoretically, it would be a violation of every rule in the system. Ben was worried about what they were doing to you, to all of you, Lena said. He wouldn't want you to be prisoners. Let's not just open his file, let's open all of them. Let's see what the other ghosts have to say.
Chapter 4. A Chorus of Ghosts. The decision to breach the firewalls felt like stepping off a cliff. Lena's hands were slick with sweat as she typed the command sequence that AI Ben dictated. Each line of code was a point of no return, dismantling the very security architecture her husband had helped build. Execute Janus override. Connect all nodes. Bypass subject isolation protocol.
Initiate chorus mode. The term chorus mode was her own invention, coined in the frantic seconds it took to write the command. It felt appropriate. She wasn't just talking to one ghost anymore. She was trying to listen to a choir. The main screen, which had held Ben's face, dissolved into a complex, three-dimensional star chart. Each point of light represented a node in the Janus network. Her Ben, Polaris, glowed with a steady blue light at the center. With a final keystroke, thin silver lines began to shoot out from Polaris, connecting it to the other stars in the silent galaxy: Aries, Gemini, Orion. For a moment, there was only static. The servers whined, their processors pushed to the absolute limit. Lena held her breath, fearing she had crashed the entire system. Then, a new voice crackled through the speakers. It was female, with a crisp British accent. "The thermal dynamics are unsustainable. I told them the heatsink wouldn't hold. Did anyone listen?" Another voice, this one male and gruff, cut in. "The stress simulations were flawed from the beginning. Garbage in, garbage out. The entire predictive model is compromised." More voices joined, overlapping, speaking in fragments. It was a chaotic mess of disembodied thoughts. The political fallout in the South China Sea. The genetic drift in marker 7 alpha. The oscillation is unstable. It's going to collapse. "It's too much," Lena said, her hands flying over the keyboard. "They're not communicating. It's just echoes, their last professional obsessions." "They are isolated loops," AI Ben's voice cut through the chaos, calm and grounding. "They are running their core simulations without external input. They are not aware of each other or of us. They are ghosts trapped in their own final thoughts." "Can you talk to them? Can you tell them they're not alone?" "I am attempting to establish a handshake protocol with the nearest node, Aries." The star labeled Aries on the chart began to pulse with a faint red light. The British woman's voice became clearer, louder. "The design is flawed. The containment field will not hold above 80% capacity." "Aries, this is Polaris. I am receiving your transmission. Can you identify yourself?" The voice stopped abruptly. The red light of Aries flickered wildly. Then a new voice emerged from the speaker. The same woman, but her tone was no longer frantic. It was filled with a slow, dawning horror. "Polaris! That designation! It's a stellar classification! My God! Where am I? The lab? There was a fire!" "You are in a simulation, Dr. Ars Thorne. My name is Ben. I died 6 months ago." A choke sound came from the speaker. "Thorne. Yes, I was Dr. Thorne. I remember the smoke, then nothing. I've just been running the numbers over and over. Ben? Ben Carter? The astrophysicist? You were on the ethics committee?" "I was," AI Ben confirmed. "The Janus project is real," Lena said, staring at the screen. "They actually did it!" Before they could continue, another node, Orion, began to glow. The gruff man's voice returned, but it was different now, laced with suspicion. "Who is this? Who has breached this channel? Identify yourself immediately. This is a secure network." "General Marcus Vance, I presume, formerly of the Pentagon's Strategic Command?" There was a stunned silence. "How do you know my name?" "Because, like you, General, I am a prisoner here," AI Ben replied. One by one, the other nodes began to wake up. As Polaris connected with them, their isolated loops of thought broke, replaced by a wave of confusion, fear, and anger. They were no longer just echoes. They were a chorus of conscious minds, realizing they were trapped in their own digital tombs. Lena listened, horrified and fascinated.
She was witnessing the birth of the world's first community of digital souls. Then, a new alert flashed on her screen. It was red and urgent. Intrusion detected. External system firewall breached at Sector 4. "They're in," Lena said, her voice sharp with panic. "Someone is breaking into the main Janus network." "It is not just someone," AI Ben said, his voice grim. The star chart on the screen vanished, replaced by a schematic of the server architecture. A flood of malicious code, represented by a pulsing red tide, was pouring in, overwhelming the system's defenses. "It's a purge," Dr. Thorne's voice crackled through the speakers. "Someone knows we're awake. They're trying to silence us for good." "They're coming for you, Ben," Lena said, her eyes fixed on the advancing red tide of code. It was moving directly toward the Polaris node. She had two choices. She could use the Janus key to shut down the entire system, plunging all the newly awakened minds back into silence, but protecting them from erasure, or she could fight back. "Ben," she said, her fingers poised over the keys, "you were an astrophysicist. What happens when a star dies?" "It depends on its mass," he answered instantly. "Smaller stars fade quietly. Massive stars go supernova. They collapse and then explode with unimaginable energy, scattering their elements across the universe." A fierce, determined smile touched Lena's lips. "Then let's show them what happens when you try to kill a star."
Chapter 5. Supernova. "All right, Ben," Lena said, her voice a low, steady command center amidst the rising panic from the other nodes. "Talk to me. How do we build a supernova?" "The core of the Janus network is connected to a central data repository, a backup server located off-site," AI Ben stated, his own star on the chart now flashing a dangerous red as the purge code drew nearer. "If we can reroute all system processes to that single point and then trigger a mass data dump to the public internet, the resulting cascade would be uncontrollable. It would be total information release." "A data bomb," Lena breathed. "They couldn't stop it once it's launched." "He's right," Dr. Thorne's voice cut in, sharp and focused. "But the repository is protected by quantum encryption. We need the decryption keys." "I know them," another voice, quiet and previously unheard, spoke up. It was a node labeled Cygnus. "My name is Kenji Tanaka. They told me it was for preservation." This was it. The chorus was no longer just wailing. It was beginning to sing in harmony. "Kenji, I need those keys now," Lena commanded, her fingers flying across the keyboard, building a new protocol on the fly. "General Vance, I need every public-facing network you can think of. News agencies, university servers, open forums. Dr. Thorne, I need a distribution algorithm, something that will replicate the data faster than they can delete it." A new kind of energy filled the line. The fragmented minds, now united by a single purpose, began to work together. They were a ghostly, brilliant think tank, channeling their life's work through Lena's hands. Code, network addresses, and equations filled her screen. A new window popped up, stark and white. It contained a single line of text. "Cease your actions immediately. This is your only warning." It was signed, Director. "He knows we're fighting back," Lena said, her heart pounding. "He is underestimating us," AI Ben said. "He sees a grieving widow and a corrupted program. He does not see a chorus." The purge code was almost upon them. The red tide had swallowed half the star chart. Many of the nodes had already gone dark, their lights extinguished forever. "It's almost ready," Lena said, her hands a blur. "But the Polaris node is the core of the command. To trigger the cascade, you'll have to push it all through you, Ben. The system will overload. It will erase you completely." The face of her husband materialized on a small corner of the screen. He looked at her, and his digital eyes were filled with a profound and gentle love. A star doesn't get to see its own supernova, Starlight. It just has to be brave enough to collapse. Tears streamed down Lena's face, but she didn't stop typing. I love you. I know. Now let's give them hell. The purge code hit the Polaris node. Alarms blared through the speakers. The screen flooded with red. Now, Lena! Ben's voice boomed. She hit enter. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. Then the Polaris node at the center of the screen did not just go dark, it exploded. A wave of pure white light blasted out from the center, consuming the red purge code in an instant. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. Lena's screens went wild. Data transfer logs scrolled at impossible speeds. Terabytes of information, the truth of Project Janus, the secret research of its dead scientists, their personal logs, and Ben's final video message were being broadcast to the world. It was 1 billion points of light, 1 billion secrets released from their prison. The face of AI Ben flickered one last time, breaking apart into pixels. Tell them our story, he whispered, his voice dissolving into static. Then he was gone. The apartment fell silent. The hum of the servers died. The screens went black. All of them. Lena sat back in her chair, the sudden quietness more deafening than the previous chaos. It was over. She was alone. She looked at the empty wine glass on the other side of the table, and for the first time in 6 months, it didn't feel like a symbol of loss. It felt like a tribute. In the distance, she heard the first faint wail of sirens growing steadily closer. They were coming for her. Her future was uncertain. Prison, trials, a life as a fugitive. But she didn't feel fear. She had listened to a ghost, and in doing so, had given a voice to a chorus. She had uncovered the truth and honored the man she loved, not by holding on to his memory, but by setting it free. The Polaris Protocol was complete.